As we continue to follow the latest developments on Donald Trump's fourth indictment, it felt important to take a step back and talk about why this is all happening in Georgia and what the location means for this case. So this all started right after the 2020 election when Donald Trump became kind of fixated on Georgia. He was the first Republican to lose the state since George H.W. Bush almost 30 years earlier. Even though Georgia was just one of many close states in 2020 and the margin in Arizona was even tighter, Georgia became a bit of an obsession. And as we've been covering, this obsession spiraled into a criminal enterprise to overturn the election results in Georgia, spearheaded by none other than Donald Trump. And now it's coming back to haunt him, of course, because what Trump did, coupled with where he did it, has created kind of the perfect storm. First of all, this is not a state case, not a federal case, and a president does not have the ability to pardon anyone for state crimes. No president does. So this big looming question of whether or not Trump will attempt to pardon himself if he wins the election is not even a question in Georgia. He simply can't do it. The governor can't do it either, because Georgia is one of just a handful of states where pardon authorities up to an independent board. And get this, the board can't even consider a pardon until at least 5 years after a person completes their sentence. The RICO statute that District Attorney Fani Willis used to bring charges here is also extremely broad in Georgia and carries stiff penalties. There were also 18 co-defendants indicted alongside Trump. So there are 18 potential opportunities for someone to flip and to help the prosecution. Also, in a pretty strong piece of evidence, Trump is on tape here, according to the indictment, knowingly, willingly, and unlawfully making false statements. And finally, if and when there's a trial in this case, it will likely be televised. Like I said, this is kind of the perfect storm, and not in a good way for Donald Trump. Joining me now to talk about all of this is Georgia State Representative Tanya Miller. She's also a former federal prosecutor and served as the Fulton County Assistant District Attorney alongside Fani Willis. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. So I just wanted to start. I mean, you have worked with District Attorney Fani Willis. This is far from her first RICO case. One of the most well-known cases that she has prosecuted was about the Atlanta public school system. What lessons do you think she might draw from that or other RICO cases that she's prosecuted?
Well, Jen, first, thanks for having me. And I think that's a great question. I think that Fani Willis really sort of got her claim to fame for prosecuting that APS trial. It was the longest trial in Georgia history. There were multiple defendants, a very long explanatory indictment, much like the indictment we see here in the Donald Trump case. I think what Fani Willis learned in that case is how to make things that seem complicated, a bunch of small, little, innocuous things, if they're taken alone, when you put them together into a full story, can paint a picture of widespread criminality. So she is very adept with that statute. She is not afraid to use it. She has been there. She has done that. She has argued all the motions. She has gone against some of the most erudite defense lawyers in the state of Georgia in that APS case. And so she has had quite the run through on how to use this Georgia RICO statute to take on criminal enterprises, so to speak, that don't necessarily seem criminal on first blush.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, I mean, she has experience with the RICO statute, with complicated cases, with a number of defendants. There has been a little, even from people who are proponents of what she's done here, skepticism, concern about 19 defendants all at once. It just feels so big and all-encompassing. Why do you think that's the right approach, that number?
Well, Jen, I will tell you that I doubt very seriously that 19 co-defendants will actually go to trial together.
Yeah, fair. So let me stop you there, because I think it's so important for people to understand that point. Why is that? And kind of what happens typically in a case like this?
Sure. So much like the way the federal government figured out how to interrupt organized crime and criminal enterprises by charging all of the folks who are involved and then trying to flip or offer cooperation deals to folks on the bottom to get to the top, I think you will see that happen in this case. We've already seen it happen. There are already individuals that we believe probably have received immunity agreements in exchange for their testimony and cooperation. You always want to get all the folks who can tell the story. And the folks at the bottom of the totem pole have an interest in getting themselves out from under it. Because again, what you want to get is the most culpable among those in the enterprise. You're going to be focused on the people at the top. So you will leverage your ability to get folks to cooperate, to incentivize them to become state's evidence by frankly charging them. You don't charge them willy-nilly. You certainly charge them only if the evidence and the law supports it, but you are charging them with an eye towards using that testimony, using their evidence potentially to convict the folks at the top of the indictment.
So interesting as you're describing this. And as a non-lawyer myself, it's, many of us are not familiar with how this actually works. So it sounds like you're saying that people lower in the enterprise, not maybe Rudy Giuliani, but people who are not household names might be earlier targets or earlier targets to flip. And how does that work exactly? Fani Willis's office contacts their lawyers to have a discussion, and what's the behind the scenes typical process?
So it can happen in a number of different ways. Sometimes you will see representatives from the district attorney's office start to engage in conversations with other defendants and their counsel on the prospect of resolving their case and what that resolution looks like and how they can get the best possible resolution if they assist if they assist the state in prosecuting and pursuing justice. You can have defendants through their counsel approach the state and ask the state for a deal. You can do attorney proffers where the attorney, him or herself, might come into the district attorney's office and meet with prosecutors and say, listen, my client, if you were to interview them under oath, would say this. Is this something that might help your case? And if there's a meeting of the minds about that, then of course the process of proffering or coming in to give information to the state will begin.
So interesting. Okay, so Georgia law also requires, which we're all learning a lot about, cameras to be allowed during judicial proceedings with a judge's approval. That's not the case in many other states, and certainly not at the federal level in exactly the same way. What will people see if there are cameras in the courtroom here? What will they see about the proceedings? What should they anticipate?
Well, Jen, this is the beauty of the way our Georgia state system works. Our courtrooms are open to the public. These are the people's courtrooms. These are not private chambers where justice happens behind closed doors. So folks will have access to everything that you would see if you were sitting in that gallery. Now, there might be some sidebar conversations that happen at the bench that are not meant for the public, sensitive information that might be taken up that you would not hear even if you were in the courtroom. But for the most part, all of the witness testimony will be fair game unless there's some motion to limit it. And so this is why I think Fani Willis's indictment is critically important. It is one of the most comprehensive sort of full stories of what Trump and his associates did in the state of Georgia and across the country to try to stop the election results in 2020. We call these kinds of indictments typically, when they give a lot of information, speaking indictments. Not all indictments have to be drafted this way. You can draft a speaking indictment that will give the public a lot of information, and the defendant and his counsel a lot of information about why they're being charged and what you expect the evidence to see. I would say that this indictment is really more of a singing indictment. I would posture that Fani Willis has already begun the trial of this case in the court of public opinion by giving the public a very clear view of exactly where her evidence is going to go. It's almost like an opening statement before we've even sat a jury.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read it all myself. I have lots of notes and highlights and all of those things on here. The other piece I've been a little confused by is just kind of what type of sentence that we could expect. Obviously, it sounds like it's up to the discretion of the judge, but there are guidelines. So if Donald Trump were convicted of racketeering, what kind of a sentence would we expect him to face?
Well, Jen, here's the thing. The minimum sentence for a RICO charge is 5 years. And that is jail time.
Could it be less than that? Could the judge decide it's less than that? Or is there discretion there? Or that's just a minimum sentence requirement?
That is a minimum sentence requirement. 5 years is a minimum sentence requirement for RICO in the state of Georgia. He can't get 1 year. He can't get 2 years. He will get 5 years if he is convicted of RICO in the state of Georgia.
Tanya Miller, I want to take your law school class. Not that you're necessarily teaching one, but thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I really appreciate it. And coming up, Donald Trump will be the elephant in the room, whether or not he shows up for the first 2024 GOP presidential debate next week. Former White House Communications Director Jennifer Palmieri joins me next.